Hi everyone, welcome to week 5 of English 97. Can you guys believe that we are already 5 weeks into the semester? It's just crazy. I know everybody is getting kind of busy and probably have a lot going on, so I'm going to try and keep this video short and sweet. So let's go ahead and get started. This week we are working on drafting essay 2. So in week 4, we worked on outlining, which is kind of a more formal pre-writing for an essay, and hopefully that sort of organizational structure will help you in drafting this week. So let's start with the assignments for this week. I try and keep every week pretty similar to the last. So you'll notice we've got readings for this week, a example essay called My Personal Experience with Schizophrenia, and then a little section of your textbook called First Drafts. So this section of your textbook is really important. It has several example first drafts to kind of get you thinking, about your own essay. After you've done those readings, you'll have a discussion board, which is going to discuss that my personal experience with schizophrenia, and then your own essay, particularly conclusions, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then finally, you've got your essay 2 draft due on Sunday. So my goal for you all is to aim for about 3 pages in your draft. But if you only get 2.5, don't freak out. If you're like, oh man, I only have 2 pages and I really don't have anything else to say, deep breaths, and we'll work on kind of adding in the revising stage. But my goal for you is to get about 3 pages. So one thing I want to talk about in starting with your outlines last week, you'll notice that in the outline, you start with your thesis statement in the introduction, and then you kind of list these main points that you're going to use to support your thesis. So these main points are actually what's going to turn into what we call topic sentences. So when you write an essay, your topic sentence is the very first sentence of each body paragraph, all right? So I'm talking about the middle of your essay. These sentences are very important because they kind of provide the organizational structure for your reader. And if I were kind of, say I'm grading 100 essays at once, which does happen, and I only have a minute to read through your essay, and I'm going to skim and read that first sentence of each paragraph, that's the first thing I get to when I get to your main points. So you want to make sure that that sentence is very clear and concise and it ties back to your thesis. This also kind of helps you stay organized as you go. So I'm going to show you some examples where we're going to go from what I outlined in my pre-writing and how I turn that into a topic sentence. So let's go back to my baking topic from last week's video. This was my thesis and supporting points for my outline. So my thesis is, particularly since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, baking is a way to escape, slow down, and see the immediate gratification of my work. And then I made a list of supporting points. I said it was a great way to spend quarantine and time at home. It helps me slow down. I have to spend several hours on one task and wait and see the results. I have a lot of pride in what I make, and I love sharing it with other people. Baking can relieve stress and anxiety, although it also does sometimes cause a little anxiety, to be honest, when it doesn't go well. But sharing it with others kind of is really what I like to focus on. I actually made some empanadas for an international cooking class I'm in right now, and the chef instructor said that it was some of the best pastry she's had in a while, and I was just like, oh my God, that really made me so happy. But anyway, so these are the points that I would want to talk about if I was writing my essay on baking, okay? So each of these supporting points is going to be its own paragraph, okay? So I'm going to take this first topic sentence and I'm going to show you how I use it to make a paragraph. So it was a great way to spend quarantine and time at home. When I go actually to my draft, I'm literally going to copy and paste that as my topic sentence. So I said, baking was and is a great way to spend quarantine and time at home. When the pandemic started, I remember seeing so many TikTok videos about people making loaves of bread and cookies and cakes, these delicious treats I wanted to try. I found myself skimming through food blogs and Instagram pages of these incredible foods I've been too scared or too busy to try myself. Between teaching virtually and taking walks with my dog, I started watching the Great British Baking Show, Chopped, and Nailed It on Netflix and thinking to myself, what if I tried this too? One day I just decided to go for it. I ordered a cast iron Dutch oven and some instant yeast and tried my first loaf of bread. I was so involved in what I was doing that I looked up and realized hours had passed since I checked my phone or worried about the world outside. So hopefully you can see here that I'm using that first sentence to determine what comes after, okay? So that first sentence is my main idea. All after are my examples and my support of that main idea, okay? But make sure that your first sentence, that the topic sentence, goes back to your thesis. So here I mentioned quarantine and spending time at home. And my thesis statement, if I go back here the other way, was talking about baking and COVID. So I want to make sure that my points really go back to my thesis. And so I might adjust some of my supporting points, some of my topic sentences as I go. But if you end up with an introduction, 4 body paragraphs that look like this, and a decent conclusion for your draft, I'm going to be like, yes, you're doing it. Alrighty, so when you go from your outline to drafting, this is how I want you to approach it. The other thing I want to discuss is introductions and conclusions. So we talked about introductions and thesis statements a lot last week, but there's also some guidelines in this part of your textbook that kind of talks about what you want in your introduction, what you want in the middle, and what you want in the conclusion. I found a lot of my students feel very comfortable with those middle paragraphs, but the introduction and the conclusion can feel like a lot of pressure. I don't know if you feel like that, but I have a lot of students who are like, I hate introductions. I can't write them. I'm terrible at them. And chances are you're not terrible, but maybe you just haven't had enough practice. So keep in mind, your introduction is just going to tell us what your topic is. It's going to kind of draw your reader in and say, hey, here's what I'm writing about. And then it's going to give your viewpoint on your topic, your thesis. So this is your opinion. It needs to be clearly stated. And it's usually at the end of your introduction, but not always. Then your middle paragraphs are going to develop that support, which is what we just talked about with your topic sentences, right? The last thing you want in your essay is a conclusion. Excuse me. So a conclusion brings the paper to an end. It restates your thesis, but it does not just repeat. I think a lot of people hear a conclusion and they think, oh, it's just a summary of what I've talked about before. And your conclusion can summarize, but I don't want to be bored by it. I don't want to read the same thing over again. So think about how you can end in a way that leaves your reader with something to think about, okay? And actually the draft examples in your textbook will really help you here. So for example, the reading I'm having y'all do this week is called My Personal Experience with Schizophrenia. And let me actually see if I can find... Okay, so this person's thesis, so his introduction, we'll start there. He says, I have paranoid schizophrenia. I developed schizophrenia gradually over a period of 9 years, with the most severe symptoms appearing when I was 28 years old. For most of those years, my family, friends, and colleagues were unaware that I was experiencing any mental problems. So I know the rest of his essay is going to talk about his schizophrenia and how it kind of developed, right? Now I'm going to skip down to his conclusion, and he ends with this idea here. He says, my message is simple, that anyone suffering with schizophrenic symptoms should seek out professional psychiatric help, that medication is a necessary component of getting well, and that a normal, productive life is possible. I am living proof. So between those two, from introduction to conclusion, he started with, okay, I have schizophrenia. I didn't know for a while, and my family and my friends were unaware. Then by the time he explains that and gets to his conclusion, he says, but there's hope. It's not a death sentence, right? So I want you all to think about why he ends in this way and how, he's not restating that. He doesn't just repeat the fact that, oh, I had schizophrenia when I was 28 and my family had a really hard time with it. That's not how he ends, but they are related, all right? So I want you to kind of think about when you're looking at your topic, at your interest, and this idea that you're really interested in, how can you end in a way that wants your reader to get involved? So for me, I might write about how I hear a lot of people say that they can't be a baker because it's, too precise. And I might talk about how baking is really about making mistakes. And that's something that we all could benefit from, right? And I'm not just saying, oh, baking was great for me, because that doesn't really end on a high note, right? So this is what I want you guys to practice in your essay 2 drafts this week. I'm going to post another video, not of me, but of someone else, kind of in more detail explaining intros and conclusions. So if you're kind of not sure about these or you want more practice, that video is for you. I will see you guys online.